evening, good night. However, and wherever you're consuming this podcast, we're very happy to have you along to our latest episode of On the Grass. This is a sort of coaching and grassroots podcast where we get some fantastic guests in from the world of football. And just to introduce a few of us, we're delighted to have Conor Washington in here from Derby County. My name's Pete Lansley. I'm involved in the FA Coach Mentor and Development Programme, also a lecturer at the University of Derby, where we have Tom Gibson here, who's a third-year student on the course and also a part-time goalkeeping coach. And then we have Ashley Donovan, who is the Football Development Officer at the Derbyshire FA and also pre-academy coach at Sheffield United. So those are the introductions. Connor's got to go now. It's pre-season. Nicky joke.
Yeah, fantastic.
But thanks ever such a lot for coming along, Connor, and sparing us some time here today. Can you just give us a little insight? You know, there you are, 32 years of age, Derby County centre forward, but also now getting into your coaching. What has made you decide to go down this route?
Nearly 33 as well. So that's probably why, to be honest. Like every footballer, I think the way I came into the game, which I'm sure we'll touch on, has made me sort of keenly aware of how short this career is. But definitely in the last 4 or 5 years, I've decided obviously that I need to start preparing for that day, wherever it may be. Hopefully not in the next year or two, but obviously you never know. And I just wanted to make myself as prepared as possible and I've tried loads of different things and sort of settled on coaching as where I'd like to be, I think.
So, Conor Washington, elite attacking coach. You're working one-on-one with a semi-pro striker. It's the day before he's going into a game. Which of the 4 corners, social, psychological, physical, technical, are you going to focus on most of all?
Can I cheat and have 2?
Go for it.
Technical and psychological. I think match day -1, obviously physical sort of out the window. Like you say, social. It will sort of come into psychological, I think. They might sort of cross a little bit of a barrier there, but definitely technical, in and around the box, or in the box mostly. That's the other thing about session design, is what's sort of informing the session design for me, especially the one-to-one striker stuff. Has been really interesting to sort of delve into the data in terms of where a goal's getting scored from, how are they getting scored, who's scoring them, how is the ball getting there, sort of variability in delivery and things like that. So I would focus on all of those things, especially in an ideal world. I'd probably be able to analyse maybe how the other team plays and maybe what's going on, 3 at the back, 2 at the back, if there's any tendencies in the centre halves and things like that. And then it'll just be mostly around just sort of creating confidence in the striker's finishing, to be honest, which is something I don't think happens loads during the week. It'd be an interesting study, to be fair, if anyone wants to do it. How many finishes does a striker get in a week? So I had a good conversation with the goalkeeper coach, obviously a good person to ask here, sort of how many shots in a day would a goalkeeper face? And we worked it out as like I think it was a good few hundred, I think. And then how many did they face on a Saturday? And it was like 6 to 8's a busy day. And I'm thinking, well, you're going from maybe 600 to maybe 1,000 shots in a week to then only facing 6 to 8 on the weekend. And listen, I'm not stupid. I understand there's a difference in physical output for me going like this, saving at different types of saves and things like that, to kicking a football. But not everything has to be a full power strike. So I definitely think there's work to be done there, because I would be amazed if many strikers are getting more than probably 40 finishes a week, and then they're getting put through, and they definitely don't get 6 to 8 shots in a game either, by the way. They're being put through and they might have not faced that situation in months, and then we're expecting them to score, and then after the game they're getting battered for not being clinical, and it's like sort of doesn't make too much sense to me.
We went to an event last year, the year before, with the PFA, and it was I almost said Paul McGuinness spoke about, it'd been interesting to Paddy McGuinness, wouldn't it? Paul McGuinness spoke about actually how often do we see goalkeeper coaches doing half volleys, whatever, at a goalkeeper. And it's like the trade-off is, why don't you go and take a striker out of the session and work on the finishing? It kind of makes me think, like, why don't we do that? And he spoke about actually getting the goalkeepers and strikers to speak to each other. So as a striker, you'll probably know what you don't want a goalkeeper to do. as a goalkeeper, he'll probably know what he doesn't want the striker to do in terms of finishing. So I think that probably could be some organic conversations which could work.
Yeah, massively. I've picked Scott Loach's brains loads of times this year about different things, and noticed like a big tendency as the ball sort of travelling into the wide part of the 18-yard box that goalkeepers are really protective of the near post. And I've seen quite a few finishes this year. There was one Salah did against Bournemouth where he's almost lobbed him. And then you had Yamal's, was it last week? The one where he's sort of driving straight and then just feeds one in the far corner because Sommer's so far over, and like, the goalkeeper seems so worried about the near post, and it's just interesting to sort of gain some insight onto why that might be and things like that. So yeah, going back to the four corner things, the psychological part would be big for me as well. I think it's something we don't really speak about too much, and strikers get sort of stuck in the habit of making the same runs no matter who's on the ball. There was a great interview with Thierry Henry that Arsene Wenger said, like, he was always moaning basically, and Arsene Wenger says to him, well, have you thought about like what your team need from you? And he was thinking, well, I know Robert Pires likes to come inside and then he wants to see a face. Like you can always run with Bergkamp because he's probably seen you. And then Freddie Ljungberg, like if you want him to see you, have to get in his eye line. And I think it's so important for strikers. And it's only been something that I've even thought about in the last couple of years. Like you'd have a left back playing at right back and he's opening up on his weak foot and I'm expecting him to hit this beautiful channel ball. It's never happening. Yeah. Or even, silly little things like the ball's bouncing around in the middle of the pitch. The centre midfielder doesn't even have hold of it yet. And the striker's made a great run, but he's made it 8 seconds too early. And you're thinking, I don't know if these things are getting spoken about enough.
And you've done your UEFA B, about to start your UEFA A. What did you find? How did you find the UEFA B?
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. So we did the IFA. It was like a bit of an accelerated one for players that had played over 7 years. And the thing I really liked about the IFA was it wasn't teach this, teach that, this shape, that shape. This is how you do a drill. It was very much, how do you want to coach? How do you see the game? And then as long as you can sort of justify your session design off the back of that, then they were happy. So, which I think is the way it should be, really. I know everybody's into game models and things like this now, but at the end of the day, you've got to believe in what you're doing.
And you need some individuality in football, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. From on the pitch, off the pitch, everywhere else. So, yeah, I totally agree with that. And hopefully it's made us better coaches for it.
What are your expectations on the UEFA
A? Probably more detail, more in depth, probably session design becoming more involved, I would say. Analysis, things like that. Whereas the UEFA B felt a lot more about sort of you as a coach, if you like, your behaviours and things like that. So I'm looking forward to it. It's in a few weeks it starts. So yeah, I'll let you know after that.
Ash, you got any?
Yeah, I guess probably stripping it right back then. When you first started playing, talked about that journey, all of that really, yeah?
So yeah, I've got an older brother, 7 years older than me, so he used to just take me up the park and stick me in goal, to be honest, and kick balls at me. But obviously the size I am, I was never going to be a goalkeeper. So, but I've always loved football for my first memories of kicking a ball around. Mum's always adamant I always had to have a ball around and was booting it all around the house. So yeah, I fell in love with the game pretty quickly, probably because of my older brother and stuff. Not that he played to any sort of great level or anything. Nobody in my family ever has. So but yeah, I just really enjoyed playing. So I was born in Gillingham in Kent, obviously like a decent sort of hotbed for football. But then I moved to in between Cambridge and Peterborough, a little place called St Ives, when I was about 7 or 8. Not a hotbed for football, unfortunately. You got sort of Cambridge and Peterborough either side, but even they're like not far off an hour away from each other. So, and I don't think the academies, well, they definitely weren't as sort of stringent as they are now in terms of getting players through the door and seeing players. So didn't really have any experience in the academies, to be honest. A couple of trials here and there, Peterborough, Cambridge and Norwich, but I was just playing non-league football. Went to uni, started playing first team football at step 10, step 5 non-league when I was 16, which really helped, to be honest, in terms of developing me. I think nines can, especially in academies now, can become a little bit too focused on the technical stuff, whereas obviously at step 5 it's just about scoring goals and causing a bit of carnage, to be honest, which I think is why you still get so much success out of non-league in the forward areas. Went to uni, started a business degree, terrible idea. I was about 18, didn't know what I wanted to do. So I just thought I'll do that. Ended up leaving after a year, was applying for the RAF, which is what my brother does. And in that time, football sort of gave me a chance at Newport.
pick up on a comment before we go back into your journey. You said about you think academy could be too technical rather than the chaos of non-league. Talk us through the thoughts behind that.
So obviously I'm biased a bit through being a 9 and through being maybe not exactly known for sort of technical prowess, if you like. But I look at it now and I think I can see why we're not seeing many 9s coming through. I think from being obviously exposed to academy football a little bit more in the last couple of years and coaching and things like that. And you look at the top number 9 probably in the world, Haaland, I would say. I mean, there's video circulating him all the time in rondos, getting picked off and miscontrolling the ball. And I think in academies we're sort of creating this like Phil Foden sort of type of player. They're all that type of player. And listen, I think in the first, especially in that foundation phase, you have to be able to do all of those things that a good sort of number 8 can do. But I think from there on, I think it can get more specialised. I think with the amount of money flying around in football, obviously the lack of outside of the top level anyway, the lack of investment in sort of YDP and PDP has been pretty alarming to me, to be honest, from what I've encountered, just in terms of coaches, the space they have access to, the hours they get access to the kids and stuff. I think there's work to do there. Yeah,
I've seen. We'll go on a bit kind of what you're doing recently, but so one of your posts you put on was about the death of number 9, and that was quite interesting to read. Talk about technical stuff. So I coach in the foundation phase. I know you coach kind of similar age group as well. I think a lot of the time I look at my practice and go, probably don't work on finishing that much. But is that because we're too focused on trying to get the ball up into the top third before we can work on a scoring? But I would think you look at players and you go, like, what's the aim of football? Is put the ball in the back of a net. And in terms of some players technically are quite messy to the eye, but I think if they can score a goal, it's not a bad habit to have, is it?
Yeah, and I think you're probably looking at it from the other end of the pitch as well in terms of defenders. I think we probably focus on, and even goalies to a certain extent, on sort of how they're like in the build, which is just everyone's obsessed with it at the moment, aren't they? But then you look at, I mean, the man probably responsible for it goes long quite a bit now with Ederson and Haaland and that. So I think we sort of get lost, and I think in terms of copying that 08-09 Barcelona team, and then you don't even realise that Pep's not done it for a long time and played 4 centre halves and all of these different things. So, and I think it goes back to the point we're making about the individuality in the coaches. I think, so what do you believe in? How do you think is the best way to get it into that final third? And I think something that does get lost along the way is like, what have you got at the top of the pitch? What have you got at centre half? If you've got 2 right-footed centre halves, should you be building out all the time? If you've got a goalie who's not that comfortable, should you be building from there? If you've got a big number 9, can you hit him and go get after it, sort of thing? There's different ways to play the game. I think it's been great to see Nottingham Forest have a great season based off of doing something slightly different that's not like what Southampton did, for example.
I think one thing we get quite a lot in grassroots and coaching is, like you say, they try to replicate teams. I want to play like Barcelona, play like Man City and build out. But I always look at my personal perspective and go, like, be effective. So whatever effective that is. If you've got, say, a target player who can big and hold the ball up, and same with a goalkeeper, if you recognise you've got a striker, one at the top of the pitch, I'm probably going, well, why wouldn't you play that pass? And that's something we get in over time instead of, and probably that comes around, like you said, the obsession, I think, at the moment with game models in terms of we have to build this way and it's how it is, rather than, and I guess, again, I'll come on to that coaching of that creativity and decision making from players to be allowed just to do what they feel is right at that time.
Yeah, I think the decision making is massive for me. I think anytime I see a pattern or I see you need to pass here or this is on or this is on, I think we're just, especially with kids, I think we're just robbing them of any sort of decision making. I mean, I've seen it a few times on the sideline of grassroots, like talking under 7, under 8s here, with like a magnetic tactics board on the side, 5v5 or 7v7, and I'm like, can't get my head around it. So
product placement. Yeah.
You can only use those if you're over 15, 16, I'm afraid. But yeah, I think football in general is just robbing people of robbing players of decision making. And I think, listen, players are partly to blame because now everyone's obsessed with detail and we want to know, okay, what might be on, what might not be on, what are they going to press with, what are we going to do, what happens if I get pressed from the inside rather than the outside. And then it just leads into a whole sort of, the player makes a mistake, he looks over to the coach and the coach is like, I told you this should have happened. It's just not how I see the game, to be honest. It's not how I want to see the game played, especially in the final third, like you say, as we'll come on to. You want to see, like, what do we want to see in the final third? Creativity, ingenuity, excitement. Like we don't want to see people stood here, and here, and then just sort of feeding the ball back and forward. Well, that's not what I want to see anyway. But I think, especially with the younger age groups, it's so important that they need to be able to make decisions. So we need to put them in situations where they have to.
So how do we do that?
Session design is obviously massive. I think, obviously, being at the start of my coaching journey is probably a little bit naively, and without having been in a role full time where I'm having to deal with all the admin and stuff. I think session design is massive, and I think we probably need to be more creative, more thoughtful, rather than, like, you guys obviously coached a long time. You've probably got about 50 of those red books, I'd imagine, with drills coming out of everywhere. It's so easy just to turn up and you might see what the theme is for the week, or you might say, "Oh, I've done this before," or like, "Oh, look, this is one that worked well 2 years ago with this group or with this age group or whatever," and you sort of do it just out of habit, I guess. But I think we need to be more thoughtful in those aspects.
Do you do that though, Ash? Because I find I do. I have got hundreds of books from when I was doing my lads under, my little under 12s or whatever, and I think, right, the thing this is, but I'm sort of relating it to the team I've got now and what their needs are. So I almost don't go back enough. Do you go back to old sessions and dig them out?
It's going to sound really bad. I don't often plan on paper. Sometimes use like websites and stuff, but I'll have, especially because of, in terms of where we coach, you have smaller groups under 8s because it's pre-academy, but kind of like a carousel base. You'll have a group for 10 minutes, keep swapping. So if my topic is quick play or finishing whatever, I know a rough session I'm going to go to. So if I've got how many players, a lot of the time it's probably going to be, I like, again, directional practice, end zone games, 4-goal games, scoring goals, whatever that may be. And kind of then just let them play. But obviously you've got to go in and coach. Kind of what someone told me, which I think was really good, was give kind of the players a toolbox in terms of, so these are your tools to break down a situation. It's then up to the player to decide which tool to use at what given time. Because how many times as coaches do we go, "Oh, we should have played that pass there, he's got to play that pass." And actually he or she then finds a different picture and changing it, you go, "Oh, do you know what? I didn't see that." And I think that's one thing for me anyway, is that allowing kids, I think, to be creative. But to answer your question, no, I don't have loads of books, no.
Yeah, but maybe it's a generational thing as well. And you guys being 28 to 33 or whatever, maybe it is more digital, and therefore it's closer to your brain already. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's a time thing, isn't it, as well?
Yeah.
So, like, has everyone got time to sit and plan a session for an hour or two for every session? I don't know is the simple answer to that question, having not done it with all the other responsibilities that come with coaching and whatever. So, but I definitely think that we can be a little bit more thoughtful, and sort of big advocate of Ben Bartlett from the few things I've read from him, the few books and that, and stuff I've seen online in terms of like this sort of constraints-led approach, in terms of making a session design and then putting constraints in that sort of get out what you want to get out, rather than forcing them into themes and things like that. So, which I think is interesting.
Sorry, just give an example of that then. So people who might not know what a constrained approach is, can you give us an example of what that might look like in a session? Not to put you under the bus or anything.
No, so say you want to work on switching the play. You could have a 6v6 or whatever with a vertical line. And you get 2 goals, for example, if you go from one side to the other before you finish. Or you can, in terms of working on a similar thing, you can make the pitch really short and really fat. So naturally, obviously, to find the space, you're going to work it around. And then on the flip side of that is if you want to sort of work on players running beyond and making runs in behind for 9s, and obviously midfielders getting their head up and playing passes, you just do the opposite. You make it really, really skinny and really long, so the space is beyond. So I just thought that was a really interesting way to coach, and not something that I've really seen, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that one thing I came across, the constrained approach, I thought was really good, and kind of like, and it probably more comes down to that practice design of, like I said, in terms of if I'm having a session, I roughly practice and I'm going to get. But if I want to work on, say, vertical combinations to horizontal, I would, like you said, change the pitch there. Have you ever had that so as a player, have you already had that in terms of, probably when you get older, it comes a little bit more structured, a little bit more, because it's, again, we're looking at it as we're speaking as coaching the foundation phase, younger kids. I guess when you're old, in terms of playing, it's more, that coach got to go and get a result in terms of for their kind of career. But kind of what's that look like for you as a player coming through in terms of sessions you've had? Has it been a lot more kind of structured approach, been a lot more freedom? How's that looked for you?
I think going back to the journey, obviously I was never in an academy, so I'll probably find it really difficult to answer that question, to be honest. And even I was probably 20 by the time I turned pro, so it was straight into a first team environment really. And it's all obviously it's probably changed in the last 6 or 7 years, I would say, in terms of development of sessions and things like that. Like you say, usually it's just Monday I could probably write out a normal week for you from 10 years ago, and everyone was doing the same thing. So it's different now, and there's different ways to get out the objectives of what you're looking for. Like the gaffer at our place now is brilliant at it. The designs are different. It's not really the same sessions, but there's always a clear sort of learning plan. There's a clear structure in terms of leading into the game. Whereas I know there's a lot of sort of old school managers that their Monday looks like this, no matter what day it is, if you're 2 weeks post pre-season or the week before the end of the season. So I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it. It's just interesting how the sort of the game's developing like that.
I'm going to throw a quick one in at you, okay, before we go into the break. And if in 10 years' time you could be one or other of these two, really reductionist question, would you be an assistant or a main frontline manager?
Frontline manager, I think.
Thank you. And that leads us into a chat that our Harvey Kennedy had recently with the former assistant manager at Wolves and West Ham, Edu Rubio. So over to you, Harvey.
So Edu, just talk a little bit about your time at Premier League clubs. I mean, you're a top assistant manager, you've been at clubs like Wolves, West Ham. What was that time like in your career?
I mean, to be fair, I've been very blessed in the last few years to have access to the Premier League and with a manager like Julian, and access to people like Julian, like sporting directors, chief executives, and understanding the job. And also in my last job, more than anything, stepping into the manager's shoes without being the manager. And that has pros and cons. And that's kind of like a good learning for someone who wants to be a manager, and someone who has been a head coach in the past in 23s and the 21s, but obviously now aspires to be a manager by his own rights in first team environment. But I also come from League One, League Two, with MK Dons, with Crawley Town. I've also been in those shoes where being underpaid, overworked, not resourced, having to do coaching, everything basically, and not having a strength and conditioning coach, not having more than one analyst who can help you out, but between the two of you have to kind of figure out how to do things and how to use the software and the rest of it. Obviously I've been in academy level, 21s, what it used to be 23s, under 18s, all the age groups. I've also done women coaching with, funny enough, with West Ham as well in the WSL. So to be fair, I kind of I've enjoyed my career so far, because I think it's given me an opportunity to remain very grounded, to understand where I want to be, to be very passionate about coaching and developing. If you ask me what's the most kind of like your buzz every day, is developing people. Of course, on the grass, developing athletes, but also developing people off the grass with my staff, with the people at the club, growth, development. That's what really gets me out of bed every morning. And I've really enjoyed it. I mean, I've really enjoyed it so far. And what's next, we'll see. I mean, you never know, right? Yeah. But to be fair, I love coaching. I love management. I love working with people, and I just love developing people and working as a team.
And would you say that being an assistant manager let you overlook the whole operation of how a club works, from the manager down to the kit men? Would you say so?
Yeah, 100%. I would say potentially, fun enough. I mean, the last year or so, I would have preferred, to coach much more on the grass. I've done loads of coaching and loads of like drills and everything. And to be fair, the gaffer does allow me to do a lot. even though he's quite hands-on. He's obviously a European head coach type of thing. So obviously he's not one of those who will be in the office smoking the cigar. He actually likes the grass. But what I'm saying is that potentially I've learned the trait of coaching in the last 17 years. I've, with academy level, under 18s, 23s, 21s, League 1, League 2, where you are under-resourced and you have to do everything yourself. And then I've also now had the opportunity to learn the management side. So how to manage upwards, how to deal with the media, how to go to different events and represent the club. And obviously that's thanks to a manager who's given me the opportunity to be much more than just an assistant coach. I remember having a conversation with other assistant managers and first team coaches and saying, wow, you're overworked. I mean, we only have to do the coaching side and you are doing much more than that. And actually then, if you think about it, it seems that your day, you've only done little coaching, but actually you haven't. You've done as much coaching as any other assistant manager or first team coach. It's just that you've done many more things. And I see it as a positive because then it's kind of like taught me what the job as a manager and as a head coach is. And most of the times is many more things than just coaching. So yeah, I've really enjoyed it.
So Edu, tell us then, what's next for you? I mean, what's on the horizon?
I don't know, to be fair. That's to be fair. When I was talking to the lads yesterday, I just, they were like, what's going to be for them? And it always happens. It doesn't matter the level. It doesn't matter whether you are a player who's just coming out of academy. It doesn't matter whether you are a coach who's just coming out of academy level or a coach who's now had a few years experience in first team and in different leagues. There is, as if you are ambitious and if you want to develop and grow and do more, there's always something more to learn, something more to do, something more to kind of like have a pass for. So I'm not too sure what's going to happen. Obviously, after West Ham, now is a period of reflection, learning a lot. So coming to Derby University, going to other universities, going to other clubs, cricket, rugby, basketball. I love learning from all the disciplines and see what we can apply into football, talking to other friends who are still in jobs. And obviously, then you learn about what they do, what they don't do. Would I do the same? Would I do something different? It's always important to reflect and keep learning and growing and developing. Obviously, I would like to obviously remain as an assistant or even make this step as a head coach for sure. And if I could choose, I would love to obviously stay in England because I love England. I love British football. My wife is English. We have our base in England, but you never know in coaching. I think you just have to be, very willing to step out of your comfort zone and then just live life like anyone else. I think that would be one of the things that I would say to anyone who wants to be a coach or a manager or an assistant coach or working football in general. You have to be prepared to live a very unexpected life and to come out of your comfort zone and to be comfortable with uncertainty because things can change. And to be fair, I'm very comfortable with that. And actually, I like that. I think I would struggle to have a job of 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, in the same company forever. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see what the future brings.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I do appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Hello and welcome back. We hope you enjoyed that chat. I'm moving over into managers that you've played under. Is there any manager that has stood out for you in training or on games on a Saturday from all the managers that you've played under? Does anyone stand out?
Yeah, a few. I've been lucky enough to work with some really good managers. One that sticks out, and obviously still the manager now, Michael O'Neill, manager of Northern Ireland. Big influence on me in terms of bringing me into the squad and playing me and loads of different things for him. I think looking back now, it must be really difficult to be an international manager in terms of the contact time you get. But I thought the sessions were really detailed, really sort of opposition driven, which it felt like they almost had to be. It feels much more like a chess match than sort of normal football at international level. So him for sure. In terms of coaches, like Steve McLaren coming as a manager at QPR, brilliant coach. Interestingly, the gaffer now, John Eustace and Guards, worked under Steve. So obviously I know them from there as well. Steve's great detail, good person to be around. Sessions were really good fun, lots of technical stuff, and similar with the detail as well, to be honest. But it didn't feel like it can do sometimes now, where it's like video analysis. It was more sort of on the pitch detail, but sessions were really enjoyable. On a personal level, Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank was really big for me in terms of little details around being a striker. And then Les Ferdinand was the director of football, so I had plenty of chats with him as well. But they were a lot more around sort of the specifics of being a striker, which obviously is what sort of I'm trying to do now. And half the reason for it is that I wasn't really coached about being a striker up until I moved there, which was sort of 23, 24. So I'd probably say that those stick out for me.
And as a player, when you're going into training and things, do you kind of realise the tactics that are going on? Is it like a clear message, or do you just go out, train, go home? Like, as a player, is it easy to navigate what the manager's trying to do in that scenario?
I think more so now. Yeah, I don't know if it's a youth thing where I just wasn't paying attention and I was just going in and playing football every day, or if maybe the game's changed and I've got a bit more aware of it in the last sort of 5 or 6 years. But yeah, now you could sort of, on a Monday, you'd probably be able to tell what was going on the Saturday now, which is good and bad. I think there's always positives and negatives to everything, but you can't go into a game saying you're underprepared now.
When was that switch when you thought of, okay, I want to go into coaching? Was it something always in the back of your mind, or was it just one time you thought, I want to go into this?
I've always been interested in it, but then I had probably a rough sort of 3-4 years with football where I sort of fell out of love with it a little bit. Injuries, not playing, moves not working out and things like that. And then in the last sort of four years or so, I've started to really enjoy the game again. And also you sort of realise I've been lucky enough to have 12 years of pure experience of being in and around football. It would almost be a waste, I think, to get rid of that experience by just leaving the game, and also the passion I have for football again now. I don't think I'd be able to find that anywhere else. So yeah, I'd say it's probably a combination of the two.
And just before I move over to us, that time where you say, you're falling out of love with the game, you've got many injuries going on. What's that like? What's that like for you, and how do you overcome those challenges? Was there anyone around you that was supporting you, or was it very much your own mental strength?
Yeah, I think it's funny, isn't it? But like, without being too philosophical about it, I've got a 7-year-old son now, and I'd never wish him to go through any of the sort of the things the pain that I was going through. But at the same time, it built resilience, and it's the only way you sort of can build resilience. So it was horrendous. Like, looking back now, I found it really tough. Didn't really have anyone to speak to. Mostly because nobody's really been in that situation. And I think even on football journeys, everyone's is really individual, and it's still pretty taboo, to be honest, to say you're struggling and things like that. So, just managed to navigate it myself, and obviously happy for the experience now, but I wasn't at the time.
Yeah. Over to you.
So you've obviously got kind of I can obviously hear you speaking some massive knowledge in terms of around the number 9 position. Especially like strikers, and having that knowledge is one thing, and I think trying to get that out is another. How have you found that in terms of sharing your knowledge of a game to those in terms of any age? Because obviously some players really struggle with that when they go into coaching, in terms of probably get a little bit frustrated because they understand it up here, but trying to get it out is one thing. You probably smiling there, probably found it frustrating at times.
Yeah.
How's that been for you?
No, you hit the nail on the head. Like, my laptop is full of just half-written keynotes and loads of different things in terms of just getting stuff out on paper, and like you say, everything makes sense up here, and then you go to deliver a session and the striker, they're looking at you like you're speaking sort of totally different language and you can't get your head around it. But I think it's sort of the beauty of coaching, and it's something I'd like to do in terms of maybe like a master's in sort of actually coaching, because I think that would be really helpful, different learning styles. And like, listen, a lot of these kids that I'm speaking to now are like not far off like being like able to be my kids, sort of thing, and it's not lost on me that like TikTok generation's straight over my head. So like, in terms of relating to them, it's difficult, but I've just tried to do it maybe through WhatsApp, or maybe with just short little videos, and not trying to sort of take up too much of their time and making them in awkward social situations and things like that. So, but it's been good for the most part. And I think the thrill of it when something it works and you sort of see the look on their face of like, oh my God, that actually worked, sort of thing. It sort of makes it all worth it. But yeah, difficult.
So what's that brings on to your coaching now? Tell us a bit about what you're doing now in terms of obviously still playing at the moment, but in terms of your coach on the side, talk us about what you're doing now.
So going back to influences, I was lucky enough to work with Alan Russell, superior striker from Instagram back in the day. And I was going for a really tough period at Peterborough. I think I'd scored 1 in about 15 at the start of the season. And just couldn't get the ball in the net, basically. It was getting chance after chance after chance. And it was one of those just scrolling through Instagram on the way. It was actually on the way back from a game. I remember it pretty vividly. And a drill come up that he was doing. And I was like, oh, that looks interesting. Followed him, ended up reaching out to him. He'd just come back from America and started to do some work with, I think, Berraino, Andre Gray. Great marketing department he had. Sucked me right in. I had a few sessions with him, and then I just went on this crazy scoring run. I think I scored 13 in 12, and then I was gone. I moved in the January. So from sort of 3 months maybe of just scoring goals, I was gone, and it's the beauty of being a striker. But it just made such a big difference to the way I thought about the game, how much confidence I had in finishing and things like that. And I thought it would really take off, and it sort of has and it hasn't. I think obviously Alan went to work with the FA, worked under Gareth Southgate as sort of striker coach / set piece coach, and did the same at Norwich. And anybody that I've come across, especially strikers, like, what do we love doing? What does anyone like doing? Putting the ball in the back of the net, and you don't get that much of an opportunity to do it at training. So it was just really good to go and focus and see things that I'm doing wrong from a technical standpoint. And there was so much thought going into the design of the session. I'd come away from them like just really excited to get into the next game and get some chances. So yeah, that was a big influence on me, and so that's where I want to take it really. Making strikers feel better about scoring goals. How can I help them? How can I help them be more productive? Like just different ways of scoring goals, different types of goals. Because I just don't think it's something we see very often now. You sort of almost see the same goal every week. So, and I just think that's just the way sessions are being designed. So
go on and tell us about your coaching now. What's it you're doing?
So yeah, 1-to-1 small group coaching. In an ideal world, it'll be sort of 16 plus, like as close to first team as possible, and then working with first team players eventually. But the kids have been great fun as well. It's been interesting because they probably don't get much exposure to it either, in terms of obviously like you say, the sessions that you're running are carousels, and you don't really split them up into positions or anything at that age. But you can usually tell. Well, you'd be a better judge of it than me, but some players I see at 7 or 8 and I think like it looks like a number 9 or looks like a centre half, or it'd be interesting to see how they go on and develop. But yeah, small groups, all around technical finishing in areas where goals get scored, trying to make them more productive in those areas, trying to get them to think differently about different things and pitch geography and everything like that, and just trying to create sessions that are fun, relevant, with different sort of service variability. So I think the amount of times you'll see a finishing drill and it will be like this perfect set from this exact angle, and the person setting it is just doing the same thing every time. Or my personal favourite, the clip from behind the goal.
You always receive the ball, don't you? Square from behind the goal.
Yeah. At like knee height, and then you get to take a touch, and it has to stay within a certain area, and then you get 3 seconds to step back before you hit it. Which I get, like a lot of it's just like it's what we like to do, and it's fun.
Yeah.
But if that's the only finishing you're getting in a session, like in my opinion, that's just sort of not good enough. So it's just all about sort of creating chances and opportunities for strikers to experience what they might on a match day.
In terms of those small group and 1-to-1 sessions you spoke about, because I have a mixed view on 1-to-1 sessions at times. So in terms of how does that look like then? Is it kind of unopposed? Is it kind of purely just technical work? But obviously, it might be slightly different in terms of the age group. We said more looking at 16s plus. What do those small sessions of 1-to-1s look like then?
Yeah, so it can vary. Obviously, it can be totally sort of no pressure. It can be maybe a little bit of pressure from me, or even more of a time pressure in terms of me telling them how quickly I want them to get the shots off. Because there's some great data done over the last couple of years in terms of how long the top strikers are taking in between touch and finish. So going back to that drill where you see they're taking 3 or 4 seconds, it's just unrealistic. So for me, I think the repetition is more important than making it massively game related. So I mostly go down that route. But in terms of repetition, it's still different types of service. Some of them are going to be bobbled in, some are going to be thigh height, 1 touch, 2 touch. It's just pure variability and just pure finishing, to be honest. I usually just go target net, because I think, well, you'll know this better than anybody, that the goalkeepers in those drills start to cheat. But if I take a strike on the left-hand side of the box, the goalie's just going to take 2 or 3 steps to his left, because he knows you're going to try and finish in the far corner. So, and I've had success with it, so I sort of believe in it. It'd be interesting to see how it plays out.
And obviously, we spoke quite a lot about kind of practice spectrum in terms of what the FA use. So the FA got to talk about unopposed all the way through to matched up and game. You spoke about the younger age group having a lot more creativity and problem solving, so probably more of a game-based stuff. And we've speaking about probably more of the technical detail in terms of the unopposed, maybe slightly with interference. When do you reckon that line starts to change in terms of what age group can we start going a bit more technique-based for brilliant basics compared to, and obviously it's a sliding spectrum, I guarantee, in terms of every age you're going to do different things, but in your opinion, when could we do kind of unopposed finishing practices in terms of, or matched up or whatever, really?
It's so difficult, I think, because like you say, you might get an hour with them a week. So it's when do you get it in and whatever. But I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be able to do unopposed stuff with players in the foundation phase. I've done it with my son. He's 7. He quite enjoys it. We speak about different things and try and sort of dilute it all the way down. Just simple rules of maybe shooting across the goalkeeper in certain areas, or the closer you get to the goalie, you might need to lift it, or and different things like that. I don't think there's necessarily an age group that you couldn't do it with, but at the same time, obviously, I understand that taking 2 players for 20 minutes in a foundation phase session is probably not sort of pretty constructive use of your time at the same time. So I sort of started to put together a rough guide of academy framework really for number 9s, and it'd be interesting to see your opinion on it, to be fair, in terms of where do you see where players start to sort of not get pigeonholed, because I think that's more like the coach sort of lead in the approach, so you play here, but it'd be interesting to know if you've seen any players that you can see quite clearly are going to be number 9s or going to be 6s or centre halves. Or
I think you can, in terms of academy football, I think you can play from an early age, but you don't know how they're going to progress and things. But we'll probably have some players who come through at certain ages and you go, they're probably going to play at the top end of the pitch or the bottom end, or even you're going about height, in terms of you can work out pitched heights for children. So if I know someone's going to be, probably works against some people, if they go particular height's going to be 6'3", 6'4", I think the English stereotype is you're going to be either end of the pitch, a striker or a centre half, whether that's right or not. But I think sometimes you can roughly go, do you know what, a really good mover, so that probably means again English probably going to go out wide, or again to threatening behind. But I think you can tell, yeah. Final thing from me is obviously you've played for a number of great clubs and you had a really good understanding of speaking about in terms of for strikers and position specific for finishing. For grassroots coach at home, in terms of want to help their striker gets better, what can they do for them to understand strikers and finishing to help them become a better coach, if that makes sense?
I think the variability is massive. Just being able to finish in different parts of the foot, different surfaces. I think I keep banging on about it, but just varying the service. So you might just step 2 yards this way, you might step 2 yards that way, you might bobble one in, you might fire one in really hard, you might go soft with it, so they might come and finish first time. And then it's just trying to sort of introduce those rules in terms of crossing, for example. If the ball's travelling really quickly across the face of the goal, the easiest finish is to sort of put it back where it came from. Just little things like that. And then if you've got a little bit more time, you might be able to open up and feed it in the far corner. But the amount of times I see a ball come firing across and a striker whose hips are already facing that corner of the goal is then trying to swivel their hips as they sort of get a touch on it. So little things like that, I think, really important. And it doesn't have to be like 25 minutes, but you might just take the strikers after the session whilst the gear's getting collected in. And I know those sessions turn into like centre halves and midfielders and everything, but as much as you can, just try and stay disciplined and just let the striker sort of do the work. You might use a goalie, you might not use a goalie. I don't think it has to be massively prescribed, and I'm always trying to think of different sessions to do with them. So I think it's just trying to dedicate a certain amount of time to putting the ball in the back of the net, really.
Just to wrap up then, one question before we start this game of this and that. Who's the toughest defender that you've come against in your career?
There's been a couple, but in terms of the actual game and the way it was played, I think probably Akanji. I look back and I think Hummels and Boateng were both really difficult to play against, but if I'm honest, we had that little of the ball that I didn't have a chance to play against them anyway. And then when I did get past them, Neuer smashed me into the advertising boardings. So that was a tough game. But Akanji, he was still at Basel at the time, and I think he was relatively young. And the way they played very much just left him 1v1 at the back. So in my head, I'm thinking, obviously, it's going to get spun down the sides and I'm going to get in every time. And got spun down the side, and he was there before I'd even moved. And then at the other side, it happened. And then it came into my feet, and he nailed me and nicked it off me. And it was really difficult to... I've sort of prided myself on being really good out of possession, but he must have stepped past me 50 times in this game. And I'm thinking, I'm done here. I must have been 27, 28. I'm thinking, I'm done here. This young centre-half from Basel's absolutely killing me. So when he went to Dortmund and eventually Man City, obviously I was buzzing, thinking, thank God for that. But yeah, really difficult to play against. Physically really good, technically really good, and read the game better than many I'd played against, to be honest.
So to wrap up then, we've got a game of this and that, and you just choose which one you prefer. Goal or assist?
Goal, yeah.
An afternoon game or night game?
Night game.
Home or away game?
Home.
Nike or Adidas?
Nike.
And to wrap up, summer football or winter football?
Summer football. I don't massively like playing in the heat, to be honest, but I do prefer it to playing in the absolutely freezing cold. So yeah, I'll go summer.
Brilliant. Well, that is all for today's episode. Conor, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks
for your
for having
time and sharing your story. That is all for this week. We'll catch you again next time.